Welcome back to the podcast, guys. My name is Tanner, and it has been a minute since I have recorded last. A lot has happened, obviously, between now and the last video I posted, which was like 2 or 3 months ago. And there is a lot to talk about and a lot to dive into. So yeah, we're just going to get into it. So my topic for today's video, I'm going to start that probably in a few minutes. So if you just want to listen to what the topic is about, just go ahead and skip forward a few minutes. What I want to do right now is just kind of talk about the vision I have going forward. Now I know my Rumble channel and my YouTube channel really does not have many subscribers at all. But I might have some people watching this video who might be coming over from TikTok, where I have a little bit more of a following on TikTok and Instagram. If you guys have been following me for a while, you would know that what I used to really post about was like exposing stuff, like exposing corruption, exposing the demonic agendas, this and that, which everything I posted, 100%, I stand by. But I was a rookie Christian, I really wasn't doing it with the right motives, I guess I should say, and I wasn't really articulating myself in the way I should have been articulating myself. So you guys probably noticed I had stopped doing those videos for a while. Then I started to redo videos after a break, and it was kind of just like pure Christian content, and then I've kind of stopped. And then as of recently, I've been posting a lot about the whole Charlie Kirk thing, which is obviously what today's video is going to be about. Now, I'll say this. When I stopped posting about all the exposing stuff, like I just said, I had to kind of check my heart. See, I dug down a lot of these rabbit holes, so I really feel like I can speak very well to what is happening, because there is a very dark agenda and it does need exposed. The Bible, specifically Ephesians 5:11, tells us to expose the unfruitful deeds of darkness. Don't partake in them, obviously, but expose them. So there definitely needs to be Christians out here who bring up these things and expose them. But I was getting so heavy on that there really was no evangelizing or spreading the gospel. And then I went to another phase, obviously, where that's all I was doing. So I kind of want to now just kind of truly mesh them. I thought I was done with the exposing stuff, but this whole Charlie Kirk thing, it's just really not sitting right with me. There's so much it needs to be said, and I see a lot of Christians. Obviously, it's a tragedy what happened, but I see a lot of Christians they're accepting the basic story they're being told. Yep, it's just one shooter. It's a 22-year-old shooter. Simple as that. They got the guy, yada yada. You guys know the story. Look, once you know enough, you know that we're lied to a lot, and I just don't want to see my Christian brothers and sisters just they don't really realize that they're being lied to, and I want them to see through it, because when you can see through it, I really think it adds more strength in your relationship with God, because you begin to realize how important the unseen is, the spiritual side of the world. It's a very, very real thing. By me realizing that's what brought me to Christ. So that's why I don't want to say like to talk about it, because I wish I wouldn't have to talk about it, but this is our reality, so I will talk about it. But since I came to Christ this way, I really feel like I can speak very well about these things and hopefully lead others to Christ by realizing there is something bigger than us, the human race. There is something much bigger than us, and there's a plot that is much more sinister than what humans would like to think other humans are capable of doing, because the powers that be are really not good. I think a lot of us could agree with that. But yeah, I just really want to help people see why we truly need Jesus in this world, because everyone can try to turn to their good deeds, but if we try to take down this beast system without Jesus, we cannot do it, because this is deeper than just humans calling the shots, okay? So anyways, yeah, I want to start the video now. I'm going to be bringing up more of this exposing stuff, a little bit political stuff, but this is going to be the first video, and I really plan to be very consistent making a lot more videos. So I just want to say right now, no matter how deep of any rabbit holes we get into, Jesus Christ is 100% the sole focus, okay? Just want to say that right now. It's all about Jesus, okay? This is all for God's glory. Nothing for me. I just want to expose truths to you guys, so that way hopefully You can grow in your relationship with Christ. Like I said, that's how I grew in relationship with Christ. That's actually how I accepted Christ. So with that being said, I think we're going to just jump into today's video. So today's video is going to be a little unique. I haven't really did a video like this before. I might do a few more like this in the future. I'm not sure. But I actually am going to be reading off of an article. It's kind of a lengthy article, but it's about the Charlie Kirk assassination, and it is amazing. It is so well articulated. Like, I feel like I'm doing the world a disgrace if I don't at least voice this exact article for more people to hear. Even if it's just 10 people, it really is worth hearing. And then I might throw in my 2 cents just a little bit at the end. And that's kind of going to be this video. This article is from maninamerica.substack.com. On Rumble, you can find a man named Man in America. His real name is Seth. I forget his last name, but he posts really great content. He's a very wise guy. If you're into like the kind of like the conspiracy-based stuff, like trying to learn the truth, but from a Christian perspective, I highly recommend you guys give him a listen. So anyways, we are just going to start reading this article. I'm going to skip forward down just a few lines. If I say I or anything personal, just keep in mind I'm reading it from this article, so it's not literally me. But yeah, I'm going to start just a few paragraphs in, and yeah, just listen. It's really worth the listen. Okay, here we go. In an age of deception, skepticism is the inevitable default. This time was no different. The patsy paraded before the cameras was quickly dismissed as a distraction. So who was the real killer? Another man was briefly taken into custody, reportedly with a rifle in his possession. He was just as quickly released. Then came the photos, a shadowy figure on a rooftop. Analysts rushed to study the angle of the shot, the precision required to make it, and the near impossible escape from such a crowded, heavily guarded event. The conclusion many drew. This was no random act, but a professional hit. Soon after, slow-motion videos began to spread. Frame by frame, people scrutinized the moment of impact, raising new doubts about what really happened. Some whispered it was staged. Others insisted it was pure theater, orchestrated by the white hats, who apparently are always in control. And layered over all of it were theories about Israel, perhaps the most explosive and dangerous threat of all, fueled by an eerie post that surfaced before the shooting suggesting Charlie himself believed he might be targeted. But if you're expecting me to dissect these theories, don't hold your breath. That's not what this article is for. And if you think you'll ever get definitive answers, you're fooling yourself. Because the truth is, we never get answers. JFK, 9/11, even the Trump attempt. The trail always goes cold. So maybe we're asking the wrong questions. Instead of who pulled the trigger, the real question is, what comes next? What is the outcome of this moment? Not the conspiracy behind it, but the chain reaction it sets into motion. Because while the nation chases theories and sifts through fragments, the real impact is unfolding in plain sight. As Saul Alinsky said, the real action is in the enemy's reaction, and the reaction to this moment, the fear, the division, the trauma, is already shaping the battlefield more than any bullet ever could. Look at the staging. Broad daylight, cameras rolling, a crowd watching, and on the eve of 9/11, the symbolism writes itself. If the goal were only to shut Charlie up, it could have been done 100 quieter ways. A car crash, a failed robbery, a sudden medical event. No spectacle, no headlines, no national imprints. But that wasn't the point. The point was the reaction, to sear this moment into memory, to light a fuse in the very people most likely to respond. But who are the people most likely to respond? Every few generations, a mass trauma event crashes into our collective consciousness and becomes the catalyst for massive social change. For my parents, it was JFK, a president's head blown apart in broad daylight, and a story that never added up. For me, it was 9/11. We all remember where we were that day, the smoke, the fear, the lies and investigations that followed. But everyone under 25 has never lived through a moment of that magnitude until now. Wait a second. Charlie Kirk was one man. How can he be compared to the thousands of lives lost on 9/11 or the death of America's most beloved presidents? Allow me to explain. Because while we've so often been led to write off Gen Z as nothing more than a bunch of weak, coddled kids, addicted to their phones, triggered by microaggressions, drowning in gender confusion and anxiety, the truth is more complicated. Gen Z, the so-called digital natives, are the first generation who will grow up with technology from cradle to grave, the first generation to watch their parents glued to screens instead of to them, the first to be raised on virtual connections, while real human bonds were stolen away. They are also the first generation raised without hope. Told from childhood they are nothing but a scourge on a dying planet. Taught that their history is nothing but slavery and shame. Forced to carry the disgrace of their entire race as a permanent stain. A generation who, as Lana Del Rey once sang, were born to die. Just human filler, bidding time until we all perish. And they grew up with false heroes, celebrities and movie stars parroting vacuous slogans, bought and paid for by global mega corporations, a steady diet of illusions. They suffered through COVID during their formative years, witnessing the hypocrisy and tyranny of their supposed elders on frightening display. They have been abandoned by a nation sworn to protect them, cast out into the desolate terrain of the virtual world, and no one has borne that weight more heavily than young men and boys. And just when it seemed no one would speak for them, no one would give them a channel to voice their frustrations, a figure rose. A man like them, young, brash, unafraid to stand, appeared and gave them a voice. That man was Charlie Kirk. For conservative Gen Z, especially the men, Charlie's death landed like a generational shockwave. This is the moment that will sear itself into their identity. They are 9/11. They are JFK. And just like their parents and their parents before them, their grief and rage will be seized upon. They will be shaped, provoked, and pointed like a weapon, used as a spark to ignite chaos, used as the excuse to usher in perhaps the most profound social and political changes in modern history. Unless we make the right choice now. But what is the right choice? My wife and I were driving down a country road yesterday afternoon, still processing the event, when she asked me, what guidance can you even give people right now? Because either way, it feels like it'll play right into the enemy's hands. I asked what she meant. She explained, people on Twitter are already calling for revenge. They're saying it's time to rise up and fight. I'm even seeing civil war trending. But if that happens, it leads straight to mass surveillance, martial law, and tyranny. But if they don't stand up, then it's just surrender. The enemy walks all over them. She was right. That's the trap. We are caught in what Marxists call a decision dilemma. As the activist playbook Beautiful Trouble puts it, a good way to ensure you get a strategically useful reaction from your target is to force them into a decision dilemma, where all of their available options play to your advantage. And that's exactly where we are now. But here's where it gets deeper. It's no accident that conservative young men are the ones being primed and provoked. They are our military-aged men, the brute force of the nation, the backbone of any uprising or revolution. Charlie spoke to them, he gave them a voice, and now, in the most public and dehumanizing way imaginable, their voice has been ripped away, just as his was. For these young men, this feels personal. It feels like a direct attack on their future. That's why this assassination is so dangerous. It isn't just the silencing of one man. It's a lit match tossed into a generation already soaked in gasoline. And if that spark catches, if these young men decide it's time for action, the whole country could erupt. And that reaction will be weaponized against all of us. The narrative flips instantly. No longer the victims of political violence. They become the threats. Headlines will blare about domestic extremism. The very people mourning Charlie's death will be recast as terrorists. That violence then becomes the excuse. The state and its corporate allies will say their hands are tied, that censorship, surveillance, gun control, and political repression are necessary to protect public safety. And history shows this is always how it works. Revolutionaries throughout time have baited their opponents into violent backlash because that backlash justifies harsher crackdowns. Marx called it class struggle. Cloward and Piven called it crisis. Either way, violence becomes the pretext for more power at the top. If violence is the trap on one side, silence is the trap on the other. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, writing about the Soviet terror, put it bluntly. And how we burned in the camps later, thinking, what would things have been like if every security operative, when he went out at night to make an arrest, had been uncertain whether he would return alive or had to say goodbye to his family? Or if during periods of mass arrests, as for example in Leningrad, when they arrested a quarter of the entire city, people had not simply sat there in their layers, paling with terror at every bang of the downstairs door and at every step on the staircase, but had understood that they had nothing left to lose and had boldly set up in the downstairs hall an ambush of half a dozen people with axes, hammers, pokers, or whatever else was at hand. The Oregons would very quickly have suffered a shortage of officers in transport, and, notwithstanding all of Stalin's thirst, the cursed machine would have ground to a halt. If we didn't love freedom enough. And even more, we had no awareness of the real situation. We purely and simply deserved everything that happened afterward. Solzhenitsyn's lament was not just about violence, it was about passivity. About what happens when people stay home, stay silent, and tell themselves someone else will act. And to be brutally honest, I believe American conservatives have fallen into that trap for far too long, too concerned about politeness, about political correctness, about keeping the peace while the other side wages war. But silence is surrender. If fear or fatigue keep us quiet now, the machine will keep tightening until one day we'll look back with the same bitter regret the author described. And that's exactly why both traps, violence on one side, silence on the other, are so deadly. Because while we're caught between the two, the architects of this chaos are free to run the oldest play in the playbook, turning us against each other. Right on cue, the narrative is being woven without a second to waste. Prominent voices, who should know better, are pointing fingers at the left, demanding justice in retaliation. At the same time, my feed is flooded with clips of liberals celebrating Charlie's murder as if it were some kind of ritual sacrifice. Was it? But here's the question we all need to ask. Why are we being shown this? On a platform with billions of users, it isn't chance, it's algorithm. The system decides what you see and when. And what does it serve up? Left versus right. Black versus white. Men versus women. Rage on tap. Conflict on demand. Divide and conquer on autopilot. The end goal hasn't changed in 100 years. As Saul Alinsky, Marxist leader and mentor to both Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, once said, "The issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution." And make no mistake, that revolution was set in motion decades ago, and we are now in its final stages. Yuri Bezmenov, the Soviet defector who described the 4 stages of ideological subversion: demoralization, destabilization, crisis, normalization, warned that the worst part comes during the crisis stage. That stage when society frays, institutions tremble, and people are primed for chaos. We are so close to that crisis that it's almost palpable. Hatred now runs so deep in America that reconciliation seems nearly impossible. And Charlie Kirk's murder, public, violent, symbolic, may well be the tipping point, or perhaps more fittingly, the turning point America never saw coming. But here's the truth. This was never about left versus right. That's the puppet show, the decoy. The real divide has always been top versus bottom. They are not your neighbor who votes Democrat. They are not the activist with pronouns in their bio. The real enemy is a class of elites, Marxist, communist, satanic, and exorbitantly wealthy, who have been working to dismantle America for generations. Why? Because America, flawed as it is, still represents one of the last outposts of freedom on this planet. We are a people who, at our core, still carry a moral compass rooted in faith, family, and God-given rights. We still have communities with good-hearted Christian men and women who uphold traditional values. That terrifies them. They no longer want competition in markets or resistance to their schemes. They no longer want the inconvenience of free people, men and women who can think, speak, and most dangerously of all, say no. What they want is the world itself, its land, its resources, its energy, without the billions of us standing in their way. A handful of slaves, managed and obedient, will do just fine. This is not new. It's a story as old as time. Since the dawn of history, tyranny has been the default. Kings, emperors, dictators ruling over the masses. Freedom is the exception, not the rule. For a brief few centuries, America stood as a radical interruption to that order. A nation built not on kings or emperors, but on God-given rights, family, faith, and freedom. But now, with the rise of new tools, digital IDs, central bank digital currencies, mass surveillance, and AI, the elites finally have the technology to make tyranny permanent and human beings obsolete. That's why this moment matters so much. If Charlie's murder becomes the match that lights the powder keg of chaos, it will serve as the perfect pretext to slam the door on freedom once and for all. All they need now is an excuse. One spark, one season of chaos that drives people to such desperation they beg for order at any cost. That's the final card, and we're closer to it than most realize. Our economy is already teetering. Jobs are evaporating. The dollar is losing its value. We are hanging off the edge of a cliff, and the hands reaching to save us are the same ones that pushed us here. Their goal isn't hidden anymore, and make no mistake, it's the goal of Satan himself. This is not politics. It's a pact with destruction, a vision of power rising from rubble, of man playing God after the world has been burned down. That same ambition is alive today, not just to dominate governments or markets, but to seize the narrative, the future, and the souls of all mankind. This is not hyperbole. This is the hour we are living in, and the ones who will carry humanity into the future are us. You and I, if and only if we choose the narrow road. So here we are. The elites think they've engineered the perfect storm. They want us boxed in with no good options. Violence that justifies tyranny or silence that ensures it. Either way, they win. But that's only true if we play by their rules. History is filled with moments when ordinary people refused to choose between the two poison cups laid before them. When they carved out a third way, one that exposed the lie, broke the spell, and pushed back the curtain on the whole illusion. This is that moment for us. Because if this really is the tipping point they've been waiting for, then we have a choice. We can be the fuel for their chaos, or we can be the wrench in their machine. And that starts with clarity, knowing who the real enemy is, refusing to get dragged into the theater of left versus right, refusing to let fear, rage, or despair drive us into the traps they've built. This isn't about matching their hates. It's about outlasting their schemes. It's about choosing faith over fear, courage over comfort, truth over lies. Because in the end, what Satan means for evil, God can use for good, if we choose wisely now. The road ahead will not be easy. It is narrow, steep, and costly. But it is also the only path that leads to life. So reject the traps, refuse the lies, stand in truth, stand in faith, stand together. If this really is the tipping point, then let it not be the moment America collapsed into chaos, but the moment her people rose, turned their eyes back to God, and chose the higher way. The narrow road is still open, but not for long. So that's the end of this article. If you stuck around long enough to listen to all of it, I told you, that was an amazing article. It really makes you think. It really puts things into perspective. Man, I mean, that's so well articulated. It is really hard to follow up on that. What I will say is that, yes, we have been given two poison cups. The only way, kind of like I was talking about at the very beginning of this video, it didn't even have to do with this article in particular, but Jesus is the truth. And just like this whole article laid out, we have these two options. Either way, it's kind of like a lose-lose that we've been forced into. If we just turn to Jesus, Satan himself, I'm convinced of it, Satan himself is responsible for orchestrating this chaos and giving us these options to play with. We have to pick one of the two. Well, he thinks that we have to pick one of the two. If we turn to Jesus, I'm telling you, the devil has power over this world, yes, but he never has power over Jesus, never. So what I'm saying is, if our nation can come into repentance, if we can truly stand on our faith, if we can truly be a Christian nation and actually live for Christ and represent Christ to the best of our abilities, Satan will be crushed. But that's basically all I want to say in this video. I'm going to be making a lot more videos in the future talking about a lot of different things. I really want to emphasize it is not a left versus right issue. It really is not. They want us to hate each other. That is the whole plot. They want this kind of like a civil war to break out because, as we've seen, tyrannical and corrupt governments use that to step in and become even more tyrannical. It's really dangerous right now, especially in our day and age, because, with AI, with companies like Palantir, mass surveillance, it's almost like they're itching to turn that loose on us. But anyways, for today's video, that's all I got. I'm going to be getting into some very controversial topics here very soon. Probably I'm going to get my YouTube video or my YouTube account taken down. Something I am seeing a lot is a really big debate in Christianity about, is Israel the Holy Land? Are the Jewish people God's chosen people as of right now? And I'm going to answer that question. Not really as much with Israel being the Holy Land. That whole region, of course, that's the Holy Land because that's where Jesus was, for sure. I hope we can all agree on that. What I don't agree with, though, and it's just to be completely honest, it is not biblical because the New Testament overwrites this, is talking about, are the Jewish people still God's chosen people? The answer is no, okay? But I'm not going to talk about that in this video. We're going to be talking about that in the upcoming videos. And I also want to talk about what Jewish people believe in, what they believe about Jesus, what their own version of the Bible tells them. It's some pretty crazy stuff. And I do think that there is a legitimate correlation between their intelligence agency and the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I'm convinced, can't prove it, so it's allegedly, but me personally, I really am convinced that they were involved behind 9/11, the Mossad at least. I think they were even working with the CIA. I'm going to show videos about why I believe that in upcoming videos, but I think they were responsible for 9/11. I think that they were responsible for the JFK assassination, the USS Liberty. That's something you really can't talk about. But anyways, yeah, that's all in videos to come. So if you guys are interested in hearing about that and you're watching this video, you've never seen me before, hey, I'm a very small channel. I'm trying to get more consistent. Hey, look, if you guys can help me out with subscribing to the channel, that's going to give me even more motivation. Right now, I'm really fueled up by the whole Charlie Kirk assassination. I don't think I'm going to be done making videos now just because of that in itself. It's like critical that now is the time to use your voice. But that's the stuff I really am going to focus on coming up. So, if that interests you, then I would love it. I really appreciate it if you guys could just subscribe, leave a message. If you want me to talk about anything in particular, just leave a message and let me know, and I would love to go in depth about it. So yeah, I think that's all I got. I always want to end my message with this. Just remember, Christ is King. You are never too far gone to be redeemed, okay? So God loves you. I love you. Jesus loves you. God bless.